Jordan or...
There is a version of basketball history that fans still argue about, and it all traces back to one night when Larry Bird and Michael Jordan shared the floor in a way that didn't feel balanced at all. It was subtle, almost invisible dominance, the kind you only notice when you replay it years later. But what exactly did Bird do differently, and why did Jordan seem to adjust instead of dominate?
The entire building was in a frenzy, as we should be. But please put the camera on Larry Bird. Larry looked up at that clock. It was like stoic demeanor, because he knew what we all knew, that they had Michael Jordan, and there was still time on the clock.
We knew where the ball was going to go. Everyone in the building knew.
Incredible playoff performance. I've never seen it before, and I had never seen it after. That wasn't Michael Jordan out there. It was God disguised as...
Campbell opening up by hitting his first. Here's Bird.
And then you had all your media naysayers. Oh, scoring champion can't win an NBA title, or you're not as good as Magic Johnson. You're not as good as Larry Bird. You're good, but you're not as good as those guys. I had to listen to all this, and that put so much wood on that fire that it kept me each and every...
This is not the kind of game people file away as routine, and that alone is the first hint that something far more unusual was already unfolding well before the final buzzer. The matchup between Larry Bird and Michael Jordan was never framed as a passing moment in basketball history, but when you go back and actually piece it together, it starts to feel less like a game and more like a quiet argument over who really owned the sport at its highest level.
We had a lot of fun on the job because it was Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, and we would do a shot, and then we would cut, and they'd have to change the camera. We'd go play 2 holes of golf and then come back. But that's kind of I'm still a little not bitter. We won the game, and I guess it's about that. But I made the steal at the end of that game, and I passed it to Mike, and then I was wide open. And
wow. The story usually begins with Michael Jordan as the unstoppable force, the young scorer who treated defenses like temporary obstacles instead of real problems. But standing on the other side was Larry Bird, already carrying a reputation that made even the best defenders slightly uncomfortable before tip-off.
So I basically took a shower pill, jumped on the bus. Like, I was pissed. And I felt like I was going to sit in the back and not talk to the coaching staff. And so I walked up. I was like, damn, Larry already on here. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I'm going to just walk, like a kid mad at their parents. Like, I'm going to just walk past him and not say nothing. And he was like, Jalen. Turned around, like, all right, coach. He had a beer in his hand. He was like, I should have got you back.
Bird was not just winning games during that era, he was shaping how people thought the game should be played. Almost like he was writing instructions while everyone else was still learning the alphabet.
We had Parrish, McHale, and Walton. All of them about 7 foot tall that could score, run, defend. We had Danny Ainge and Dennis Johnson, our guards, and I was a small forward. So we had a big team, and we were deep, we were big, and of all the teams I've been on, there's no question that was the best team. Our whole thing was just do what we can do to hold Michael down, but you don't hold the great ones down.
Larry Bird at his best, LeBron James at his best.
Oh, my God. And do we have to put the teams, too, or just individual players?
If there's a draft,
oh my God,
you can take Bird or LeBron.
Oh.
So let's say I take Larry at this age when I think he averaged 30, 10, and 7, something like that.
By the mid-1980s, Bird was already sitting at the top of the basketball world in a way that felt almost permanent. He had stacked MVP awards, championship success, and a level of consistency that made his dominance feel routine. The Celtics were not just winning, they were controlling entire seasons with a quiet confidence that made opponents feel like they were arriving late to a conversation that had already started without them. Yet even in that environment, something new was forming in the background, and it wore a number 23. Michael Jordan entered the league like a rumor that suddenly turned real. From the very beginning, he played with a kind of fearlessness that did not match his experience level. He attacked defenses with a creativity that felt almost disrespectful, as if he had not yet learned that certain shots were supposed to be impossible. And that is exactly what made the Celtics take notice earlier than most teams. Because in a league full of stars, Jordan was already behaving like someone who expected to become the standard. The first time these worlds truly collided, it did not feel balanced. The Celtics were still the established force, a team built on discipline, structure, and an almost mathematical understanding of spacing and timing. Jordan, on the other hand, was chaos wrapped in elegance. Every drive felt like a challenge to the defense itself, not just the player in front of him.
I remember being underneath the basket as the ball is coming, and I'm looking, I'm like, this is going in. I mean, millimeters in and out. And we made him double clutch on that shot, and he still almost made it.
Yeah, y'all being disrespectful. I said, what are we doing? He says, y'all got a white guy trying to guard me. I remember one time we were playing the Celtics, talking to Larry, who was amazing. So it's my team at this point, because Doc and Moses are gone, and Larry says, Chuck, can I talk to you a second? I said, sure, what's up, LB? He says, yo, man, y'all being disrespectful to me. I said, Larry, I would never let one of my players be disrespectful. He's like, yeah, y'all being disrespectful. I said, what are we doing? He says, y'all got a white guy trying to guard me.
And yet, somehow, Larry Bird never reacted like someone being overwhelmed. Instead, he treated Jordan the way a veteran chess player treats a bold new opponent, watching, adjusting, and waiting for the exact moment to flip the board. What made Bird different during that period was not just scoring or passing, but how he controlled the rhythm of entire possessions without needing the spotlight. He could manipulate spacing with a simple step, force defenders into uncomfortable decisions without even touching the ball, and then punish those decisions with almost surgical accuracy. It was the kind of dominance that did not always show up in highlight reels, but made coaches lose sleep. Jordan, meanwhile, was beginning to understand something important about the Celtics' defense. Every time he attacked, it felt like the entire system responded instantly, almost like it had been waiting for him specifically. It was not just one defender, it was layers of help, timing, and anticipation that turned every drive into a negotiation. And in the middle of all of that, Bird was still finding ways to score in places where no one expected him to even be involved.
But at the same time, as a basketball player, I'm trying to become the best that I can, and for someone like me who achieved a lot in over the time of my career, you look for any kind of messages that people may say or do to get you motivated to play the game of basketball at the highest level, because that is when I feel like I excel at my best.
Michael Jordan didn't beat Larry Bird. You showed Michael Jordan going between his legs one time in the highlights against Larry Bird, and that was the game he got 63.
That's when he dropped 63 on Bird, yes.
But if memory serves me correct, they got swept. No, not lost. They got swept.
LeBron has gotten swept before.
So Michael Jordan in the 80s, he never won. He never beat Larry Bird. He never beat Magic and Kareem.
Jordan would explode into the lane and suddenly find 3 bodies waiting for him, while on the other end, Bird would casually drift into open space like he had already read the ending of the play before it began. It was not loud dominance, it was calculated inevitability, the kind that slowly changes how opponents think rather than how they react. As the game tightened, something strange started happening. The Bulls were not collapsing, and Jordan was not disappearing, but the Celtics never seemed rushed. Bird, in particular, looked like he was playing at a different speed entirely. Not faster, but more controlled, as if the entire game was unfolding slightly slower in his mind than it was for everyone else. That small difference in perception created gaps that no defensive scheme could fully erase. At one point, Jordan began to adjust, not by stepping back, but by trying to match that control with pure force. Suddenly, what looked like a one-on-one statement game turned into a demonstration of how a single player could elevate an entire system without ever losing individual impact. The Celtics' offense started flowing through Bird in a way that made every possession feel like a controlled experiment. If the defense collapsed, he scored. If they stayed home, he passed. If they switched, he punished mismatches with patience that felt almost insulting.
It's for us to tell you who the GOAT is, the people who've admired or both players or multiple players, to tell you it is by the criteria that we set. And the one thing that I would say that creates him and makes him the basketball GOAT of everything that we've seen in our day, in our lifetime, is that everything that we talk about and we see on this part, on the offensive end, he was just as good on the defensive end.
Meanwhile, Jordan continued to produce at a high level, but now it was clear that every basket required maximum effort, while Bird's impact seemed to come with minimal resistance. By halftime in one of their most discussed meetings, the scoreboard was close, but the feeling was not. Jordan had already shown flashes of brilliance that would later define his career, yet Bird had already bent the structure of the game around his decisions. It was the difference between reacting to a storm and quietly steering the weather. The second half did not change the narrative, it clarified it. Jordan pushed harder, trying to impose his will, while Bird continued to expand his influence beyond scoring. He started dictating tempo, slowing possessions when needed, accelerating them when advantages appeared, and keeping the Celtics in control even when the Bulls managed short runs. Every adjustment from Chicago seemed to arrive just a little too late. What made Bird's performance even more unsettling for opponents was how normal it looked. There was no excessive celebration, no visible struggle, no dramatic shifts in body language. He simply kept making the correct decision over and over again until the game quietly tilted in his direction. It was dominance without spectacle, which somehow made it even harder to counter.
Jordan, short jumper, and it drops, and 50.
Which is, we pretend Jordan's career was 6 years long. Everyone ate on Michael's watch. Larry Bird, the best player when he walked into the league. You know how many times Michael beat Larry in the playoffs? Is 0.
I'm like, what? I'm like, what? He's like, and there's only 2 guys said that to me, him and Michael.
Yeah.
Michael said to me one game, he said, yo, man, y'all, I'm just offended out here. I said, what you offended by? Y'all got a white guy trying to guard me. Larry and Michael are the only 2 guys. And you got to laugh.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you got to laugh.
Because it's a setup, too.
Yeah,
you get your hook, line, and sinker. What's happening?
Jordan, on the other hand, was building something different. Even in games where the Celtics managed to control the outcome, he was collecting information. He was learning how elite defenses rotated, how veteran players disguised help, and how small hesitations could be exploited at the highest level. And unknowingly, Bird was part of that education, not by defeating him, but by forcing him to evolve. By the time the final stretch of these early matchups arrived, the pattern had become clear. The Celtics were not just beating the Bulls, they were exposing the difference between raw greatness and fully constructed dominance. Jordan was not being humbled in the traditional sense, but he was being introduced to a version of greatness that did not rely on athletic superiority alone. And Bird, whether intentionally or not, was demonstrating that intelligence, timing, and control could shape outcomes just as powerfully as explosiveness. Years later, when people look back at those encounters, the debate usually gets simplified into winners and losers, stats and highlights, legacy and rings. But what actually happened on the floor was more subtle. It was a rare moment where one generation of greatness quietly measured itself against another, and neither walked away unchanged.
People want to talk about who's the greatest, the GOATs of all time. Y'all will never play against Larry Bird. Larry Bird would give you nightmares now if you had to sit back and think about it. Kevin McHale would smell like garlic on purpose. And rub his underarms. Petrovic. You remember that there was that player, Petrovic? Can't even punch him and it's not going to do anything. You would have been great. Because you, back in the day, you can fight and then when they break you up, they just tell you to calm down. Yeah. And then a coach come by and go, you know, you don't get paid to fight.
Is he the greatest small forward of all time? Like, is he two? Yes. Is LeBron a small forward in your opinion?
LeBron can play all 5 positions.
So you're not counting the small forward.
He's like Magic. So Magic, LeBron over here.
Okay.
Kobe and Michael over here.
Okay.
Larry Bird and everybody else over here. But not.
Because before Michael Jordan became the unquestioned standard of basketball greatness, there was a period where Larry Bird showed him something essential. Not a lesson written in speeches or interviews, but one embedded in possessions, rotations, and decisions made under pressure. And that lesson did not say who the greatest was. It simply showed what greatness looked like when it was already fully formed, waiting for the next one to catch up. What makes those early encounters even more fascinating in hindsight is how little anyone realized they were watching a transfer of knowledge disguised as competition. But underneath that structure, there was a very specific kind of pressure being placed on Michael Jordan, one that did not come from trash talk or physical intimidation, but from consistency that refused to break. Jordan was still in that phase of his career where brilliance was not the question, but sustainability was. He could dominate stretches of a game in ways that felt almost unreal, yet sustaining that impact against a team like the Celtics required something deeper than scoring ability. It required reading the entire court like a veteran, and more importantly, understanding when not to force the moment. That was exactly where Larry Bird quietly lived.
Half of the game against the Celtics Thursday. Jordan trying to fake Bird, can't do it.
Damn. Man, listen, I got articles from when Boston was trying to trade Larry Bird to the Bulls, and Jordan said he'd take a pay cut. I can't beat him. I'd take a pay cut for him to come over here. See, most people can't get the print. I'm having editors from the 80s send me all their print work.
Hold on, did Jordan did
Jordan said so. The
Jordan tell you that?
Boston Celtics was thinking about trading Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan said he'll take a pay cut.
Bird never needed to chase the game because the game always seemed to drift toward him. If the pace was too fast, he slowed it down with possession control and intelligent spacing. If the defense settled too comfortably, he disrupted it with off-ball movement that looked simple but constantly created uncertainty. And if the opponent tried to focus entirely on stopping him, he turned into a distributor who made the entire system punish that decision. As the games progressed, something subtle began to happen in Jordan's approach. He started experimenting more, not just with scoring, but with pacing. There were possessions where he slowed down deliberately, trying to mirror the control Boston was imposing. Boston's defense during that era deserves its own attention, because it was not built on one star shutting someone down. It was built on communication, rotation timing, and an almost uncomfortable awareness of passing lanes before they fully open. That meant Jordan was never just facing his defender. He was facing a system that was already reacting before he made his move. And in the middle of that system, Bird functioned as both scorer and coordinator, which made him even more dangerous. It was basketball that looked almost too simple to be elite, which is exactly why it worked at the highest level. Complexity was hidden inside repetition and discipline.
You're not better than Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, right? Kareem, Wilt, Bill Russell. You're not better than those guys. So we're in the room getting ready for the three-point contest at an All-Star game. Larry walks in and says, "Which one of y'all gonna come in second place?" Y'all heard me. Which one of y'all gonna come in second place? I'm like, damn, that was like my first real talk to him. Ooh, that sounded pretty aggressive. He won though. He won. I mean, he was one of the best at trash talking, man.
Meanwhile, Jordan kept producing moments that would later define highlight culture. Explosive drives, mid-air adjustments, and finishes that made crowds react before they fully understood what they had seen. But what he was gradually learning, almost without realizing it, was that highlights do not automatically translate into control, and control was exactly what Bird specialized in. By the fourth quarter of those early battles, something became visible even to casual viewers. The Celtics were not just trying to score more points, they were managing the entire emotional temperature of the game. They knew when to slow it down, when to speed it up, when to force isolation, and when to let ball movement do the work. Bird, at the center of it, was not reacting to the game anymore. He was shaping it. Jordan would still have his moments, because greatness does not disappear